Jake's POV. Just like we were told, Queen Ompera flew into the room from our left, and we received our signal to bow. Once she had landed on her polished metal pole, she said, "Please, raise your heads." Her voice sounded young to me, but either Suma and the guide didn't notice, or it was normal to them, because neither of them reacted to it. Even after hearing her speak in the core room earlier, it still caught me off guard. Thankfully my head was down, so I don't think anyone noticed my reaction. I stood up, as did Suma and the guide. It was at that point I noticed she hadn't entered the room alone. Beside her were 4 large bestial familiars and her guards, their royal mage masters. "I am Queen Ompera, 64th heir to the throne of Ambos, and ruler of our great country." "Great Queen Ompera of Ambos," Suma started introducing herself, as we were instructed. "I am Suma, of Count Thakoma Isbar's domain, master of the familiar called Sentinel." Now it was my turn. "Great Queen Ompera of Ambos, I am the familiar, Sentinel." "It is a pleasure to meet you, Suma and Sentinel, and thank you for answering my summons. Please, be at ease," she said. With that, we all relaxed a bit, except for her guards, who were busy staring daggers into my soul. "Thank you, Your Majesty," Suma said. "Lady Suma, familiar Sentinel, the reason I have called you here today is simple. I have several questions I would like you to answer, and concerns I would like you to put to rest," the Queen said. "We would be happy to answer any questions Your Majesty has," Suma said. I decided to let Suma do most of the talking, just in case I accidentally offended the Queen somehow. "My questions mostly pertain to your familiar, Lady Suma, but I do have one for you," the Queen said to my dismay. "Lady Suma, how did you manage to summon Sentinel? According to what I have been told about you, your familiar is one powerful enough to give even a court mage trouble during summoning, let alone a domination ritual. What method did you use?" "When I first summoned him, he was rather young, and much weaker." "So, he has been your familiar for many years, then. Our records indicate that he was only acquired by you within the last 2 years." "The records are correct. However, I have also spent some time attempting to figure that out as well. Eventually I concluded it was because I used the malefic summoning technique the first time I summoned Sentinel. Although outdated now, it was being taught in my academy at the time as our primary summoning method," Suma explained, although I still didn't understand. "I see. Well, that explains how you were able to summon him after he had reached maturity, at least." Suma then spoke to me over our private connection. "I can explain that to you later, Jake." "Well then, Sentinel, are you ready to answer my questions?" "Yes, Queen Ompera, I am." "My first question is simple. Sentinel, who are you?" "I'm sorry, can I ask what you mean?" The Queen took a breath. "Sentinel, I wish to speak plainly. You frighten me more than I can express. When I look at you, I am reminded of the nightmares I had as a child, of the stories of the Vikings who slaughtered a path across Ambos, and all the countries on this continent, and of the carvings left by the survivors of that time. To me, you appear as a monster out of a child's tale. So, Sentinel, I want to know, who are you? Are you a monster, a weapon, or something else?" I sighed. I'm just a guy, I don't know what else to say. There was silence, and I used it to think about my answer. "Queen Ompera, my name is Jake, and when I became Suma's familiar, she gave me the name Sentinel. I am not a Viking, but honestly you're not exactly wrong. I'm probably the descendant of the Vikings. Well, maybe. It's really unclear, actually. Who am I? I don't know. I'm a soldier in your army, a son, and a friend to Suma. I'm not a monster." There was another long pause. During it, I could feel waves of anxiety flowing from Suma, and when I looked over at her, she was staring straight down at the floor, and her sparkle had almost completely stopped. "Okay, Sentinel, I choose to believe you," Queen Ompera said flatly. "However, I have a request to make of you both. Please leave the royal army." "What? Why, my queen?" Suma asked. "When my father, King Arprat, was still in power, and he heard that your familiar, Sentinel, had defeated a drake in single combat, as well as a magistrate, he immediately consulted his advisors. After much deliberation, they concluded that the best thing to do would be to make him into our country's weapon." When she said that, I felt a lump in my throat. I was shocked, obviously, but not really surprised. I always wondered about that, honestly. However, he died before he could put any of his plans into motion. I breathed a sigh of relief. I take it that you don't have those same plans then? I asked, that lump still in my throat. I do not. But why ask us to leave your army? Suma asked. Because I do not wish for the two of you to become weapons, especially not ones that may put Ambos in peril. We would not turn against Ambos or you, my queen, Suma said. That's true, I agreed. Personally, I like this country. It had friendly people, and I was making a killing selling paper last year. I am not worried that you will attack my country, but about how the nobility might use you. Suddenly it clicked. Ah, I see. See? See what? Suma asked. Lady Suma, the balance of power in the country, where would you say it lies? The queen asked. With you, Queen Umpera. And why is that? Because you are the queen. And how did I become the queen? I didn't... Because you were born first? Suma guessed. No. I was my father's fourth child and my mother's second. Then I'm afraid I do not know, my queen. Politics, I said. You are correct, Sentinel. After the death of my father's first child, who was originally going to inherit the throne, several factions formed, and the nobles that supported me were victorious. That's the way things used to be done on Earth, too, I said. And now, the nobles that supported my ascension are given higher priority, and the ones that did not were dealt with. That is why I am the queen, Lady Suma. I see, Suma said quietly. The queen looked over at me, her eyes all but boring a hole in my head. However, I am not a fool. Sentinel, your very existence could throw the balance of power into turmoil. Even in Zak Hashem, your influence has already caused an upset, or rather, an enhanced one. The magistrate, I asked, as well as his supporters. The queen shook her head and ruffled her feathers. Already I have had to put down an attempted noble rebellion against the Grand Duke. I do not wish for more bloodshed. But will leaving the army really solve anything? I wondered. I do not know. It is my hope only that you do not become unwitting pawns during your time there. I cannot, or rather do not wish to, force you to leave the army. However, I can have your mandatory service waived, and compensate you if you choose to leave. Suma and I looked at one another. What do you think? I asked. Suma turned back to the queen. May we have some time to discuss this, my queen? Queen Umpera nodded her head. Yes. Please take as long as you see fit. Once you have made your decision, return to the castle, and I will meet with you again.